Welcome to The First Turn. I'm your host, Hyena, and today, Llama and I are talking Age of Sigmar. We talk about the upcoming model releases for Flesh Eater Courts, and we discuss the model design, our hopes for the rules, and the hints we've seen leading up to it through previous releases. We talk about the precedented sets and patterns we've seen with specialist games leading into line refreshes, sometimes years later. We talk about some of the results from the World Open, and our hopes for the Skaven, with them A, needing a line refresh most of all, and B, performing well, taking second, and being put into the spotlight, and more. If you like what you hear, give us a like, a thumbs up, a follow, or subscribe. Or leave us a comment with your questions or something you'd like to hear us talk about. All right, let's get to it.
A bitch store that got him in.
Yeah. Because you don't need 30 for 30 guys. You need 30 for a unit of 40 or something, right? Because then you're going to do all the special weapons in the unit.
Yeah.
And there should
you're going to at least do 2 and 2.
Okay.
For your 20-man blobs. So you only need like 16 spine fist pairs for.
So you need a couple more to fill out your units.
I would need literally one more pair.
Okay. Now, are there extra ones in your newer kits that you could use for a different unit because you're not using them because you're putting on a shard launcher, not the shard launcher, the web launcher? Or something?
Well, yes. Yeah.
So counting those?
Yeah, because it comes with 10 pairs.
Okay.
And 10 flesh borers and 10 devourers in each box.
Okay.
And then it comes with one of each of the special weapons. And then in a 20-man, you can obviously have 2, but yes.
Okay.
So yes, there will be enough. But when I saw they had 3 pairs of each variant, I was like, add, check out immediately.
Hilarious. So, it feels really weird not having talked last week. You know, it's not like it's kind of like we've gotten into a pattern, and it felt a little off not having the talk.
Yeah.
Fortunately, there's not a lot to talk about.
No,
because last 2 weeks, I mean, we've had a little bit, right? We had the big news the last time we spoke about the Flesh Eater Courts and their.
Yep.
I mean, we've had time to digest that. And really kind of look further into that and let that sink in and see how we feel about it, days later, just after sleeping. I really like Usharan. He looks amazing. That's the new Mortar.
Yep.
Super, super cool. Still like that. Really like the look of almost all the new Flesh Eater Court models. They're very fitting for the new line.
Yep.
I'm wondering about the rules because we've seen a little bit about the rules recently. Might be too good for some of them. The little bits we've seen, like the new Bat Riders, right?
Yeah.
They have both an ability to make it so that you can't receive orders to like Overwatch and impact hits at the same time. And the impact hits are huge. They're like, it's on a 4+ per motto. It's D3 mortal wounds. Those are big impact hits. That's something that a much larger thing gets, right? Like, yeah, those little-ish, Bat Riders getting that is kind of powerful. We don't know points cost yet. We don't know much. We know a very tiny amount. We know that they've got a new battletome trait that is like a stacking per hero sort of tally that they accumulate. As the tallies go up, they get to activate either abilities or like healing. They get to do stuff with those tallies. Now, that to me seems like a bit of a nerf, call it. It's not as strong as the previous one, because the previous one was you are in range of a unit. Just each character restores models, right? Mm-hmm. No hoops to jump through. No nothing, right? Like roll this many dice, every 3 up is a model back. Very powerful ability. If it's a knight, it's on a 5. It was something like that. Now it's as the characters do deeds, their equivalent of knightly deeds, they start getting knightly valor points on the characters. And I think you can spend those knightly valor points to like bring models back to units. But the way you get them is by successfully casting spells, which that's 1 per turn if you successfully get it off. You heal 1 wound. Or by doing damage in melee. And it seems like that is the way to really get these points, because it's like per wound dealt or per model removed. I think it's wound dealt. You get one of these knightly valor points. And so if you go in there and you do 6 damage, well, you max out. And the next turn it's like, okay, 6 models back to this surf unit. That seems very, very strong. But it doesn't seem strong enough when you're not fighting. Like there's no support pieces that are going to be able to do, unless there's ways to, artifacts or command abilities or command traits that give you extra ones for free.
Yeah, similar maybe to how Maggotkin of Nurgle disease point
Sure.
system when we first looked at it. We're like, man, I don't think there's a whole lot of ways they're going to get them. And then all of a sudden it turns out there's a bunch of ways they can get it.
And again, we don't know the whole
Yeah.
story because it's not out yet, obviously.
My favorite looking model outside of the Mortark might just be the Executioner guy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Which I completely forgot about him.
He's so simply undead.
Yeah. He's not part of the starter box.
No.
But there's a handful of characters that are not part of that starter box.
Yeah.
So if we run through it again, we've got the Mortark, who is not in the starter box.
Right.
Big centerpiece. We have the Knight Riders, the bats, which are in there.
Yep.
You have 20 of the new ghouls, which make 2 different variants, either swords or halberds.
Yep.
They're in there, 20 of them. You have one of the new characters, which is the one with bat wings.
Mm-hmm.
The Royal Keymaster.
The one whose art is on like the cover.
Yeah. That guy. Super cool model. I think he might be one of my favorite ones. He's so classic, like Nosferatu vampire, you know? I really like that one. And then there is the new Vargulf.
Yeah.
Which is like no longer flies, no longer has wings, isn't a bat anymore. He's just a big gangly ghoul, which is super cool. I like the art direction for that.
It's very Blair Witchy, those long forearms.
If he had antlers, I'm almost say he's a Wendigo.
Wendigo, yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. Super cool model. I
like
think
the Jotun from The Ritual.
Absolutely, yeah. A lot of those things draw from the same sort of lore and mythology to get their looks. Super cool. So that box is neat, but outside of that box, which is what we just listed, there's only one character, I believe. Unless the big monster counts as a character, I'm not sure. I don't think so, though. But we're also looking at Intestines Men.
Yep.
The guy with the judge.
Yep.
Look at the judge is not in that box. As you pointed out, the executioner is not in that box. And there's one more, right?
This. What was he? I don't know his name. Looks like a priest sort of guy.
Is the one with like the bone hammer?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got like a chest with like organs in it. Yeah, he's like a hierophant.
Yeah.
Or something.
He's got a very priestly looking.
Yeah. So there's like, what is that, 4 or 5 foot characters that they're getting?
Yeah.
And I assume a lot of these are gonna fill the roles of like replacing the courtiers, right? The courtiers, the previous individual model characters for the units.
And I think we've seen in both systems that these characters now, instead of just being random levels of fighty solo, are adopting some ideas from other games, perhaps, where these solos literally affect the way, at the very least, a module, if not the whole army, can play, because they all do things in a bubble.
Right. And they do things for very specific units, and make the things that the units already do them better. Yeah. We've seen a lot of that. There was the Exile Fire Slayer guy did that. Mm-hmm. You had the new Ardboy boss does exactly that. He just makes the unit shield slam and rally better.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very specific thing to their war scroll that he just improves. So I wonder if some of them will do things like that, where they buff very specific units and you bring them for that reason. Yeah. Like, I wonder if like the Executioner guy is better, like if he runs with the guys with halberds. Right. You know, and does something for them.
And aesthetically, I think it's something that they nailed. A model so simple that isn't too busily packed with detail, but the detail has this crisp. I'm actually impressed with how the team did the axe head on that weapon he's carrying, because they did like a hybrid of NMM and TMM techniques on there. Definitely showing that they can like up that level. And since we've kind of as a group shifted to paint mode, since sort of a tournament hall has come and gone, now we're all kind of in hobby mind. Now I look at that stuff a lot more. So that's pretty exciting. So I might get one of him just to paint him.
I might get the starter box. I'm not sure yet. Just to have the book.
Some FECs?
Yeah. I have a lot, actually.
Yeah, okay.
I probably have like 70 ghouls.
Oh.
I might have like 6 of the big guys. My dragon kit is built as a dragon, not as a Terrorgeist. I have obviously the Ghoul King on foot. I've got the Archregent, the guy hanging off the pillar.
Yeah, yep.
So I've got a good start to a Flesh Eater army already. I need to bolster it with some knights though.
To make some of the new
flesh it out,
the new goodies.
And so, I could very easily complete my army. Call it.
And they expanded on the fluff some more. Not only through the campaign stories that they've been doing, But it was neat reading some of the articles that Games Workshop posted about like the roles that the Flesh Eater courts themselves feel that they fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
Like they answer the calls of human towns that are in distress,
Right.
thinking that they're going to show up and rescue. They just also end up a lot of times eating the people there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's really funny. We need help. And then they show up. It's just like, yeah, it's hilarious.
Yep.
There is more story about Usharan that I want to dig into because apparently he is a character from old. He was some kind of character that got ported over from the old world, like most of the Mortarks. I know we know several of the Mortarks are dead. Some of them did not make it past the end times. Luther was actually killed.
Yep.
And there was another one too. The Red Duke, was he a Mortark?
He might have been.
It was it was a character like that. It was another famous vampire that was just like actually slain. And so they just didn't make it. One of them was betrayed by the other Mortarks, I believe. And just like
I think Manfred betrayed Luther.
Is that what it was? Yeah. It makes sense.
Like after they'd done something, he just sort of like killed him on the way home kind of deal.
Just kind of like grabbed him off his flying horse and just drops him or something. You know?
Because he was another part of the Van Karstein-ish bloodline, and I think Manfred just doesn't tolerate any competition.
I mean, none of the vampires tolerate each other very well.
And it sounds like the Flesh Eater courts get in a lot of feuds, specifically with the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and a little. They had some.
They don't just eat the flesh; they eat the bones.
Yeah, and the Mortark had some history with Neferata. I think she's the other one, right?
Well, it sounded like Neferata's the Queen of the Damned sort of vampire-looking bloodline with really big headdress. And, long flowy cloak,
and one of the first, old world story. Like a lot of Tomb Kings hated her.
Yeah, she was the one of the first of the vampires to drink the tainted blood of Nagash, because he was the first
Yep.
Well, if he wasn't the first vampire, I think Neferata was. I think it was something like that.
Yeah, he was a necromancer.
He's a necromancer. And he turned lich. Right, that kind of thing.
Right.
Powerful wizard, mastery of undeath, phylacteries, sustaining the spirit.
Right.
And he never turned vampire. Nope. Neferata, I believe, tested out the first elixir of ever life, ever living, whatever they called it, which turned her into a vampire.
Right.
I think she was the first. So, which is why she controls like the courts of the Llamians, which are like the manipulative vampires that don't actually necessarily do the fighting, but they charm people and they sway them onto their side and they convince them to do things. They're the thrall master vampires.
And then Usharan, he had some neat story, and I may have read it wrong, so this is just going from rote here, but it sounded like he worked for Nagash, he did something to betray him, but then when he was reborn, like he died, and then when he came back, he had literally forgotten about his own betrayal to Nagash and seemed so loyal that Nagash gave him another shot. I was like,
I thought they caught him. They had to track him down and catch him after he betrayed.
Oh, maybe.
And they tortured him for so long that he forgot most things.
That might have been it, yeah.
And then now he's back on that side because he was tortured for so long that he forgot. And it is interesting looking at sort of the explanation for the models' designs, because what do you do to make ghouls look more than just a ghoul?
Yeah,
right. The execution you were talking about has really cool design elements to him that makes him he's very clearly a ghoul.
Yep. But
he's so characterful, and there's so much going on with him.
Yeah.
I feel like most of the characters are like that, if not over the top, like Entrailhead. They're still very fitting, and
the Gore Warden guy who is the one who comes in the starter box.
That's the Keymaster. Yeah. Okay.
They were talking about how do you get him to be horrifying without just adding a bunch of gore to the model,
right?
Because I know Games Workshop has bloody and gross elements to some of their models, but they try to also appeal to a broader audience, and so. They did that mixture of he still invokes a classic image of a vampire or a ghoul king, but then you mix in these noble duties that at least he believes he has, wielding them keys and
the bone gorget. I think one of the things they did really well is they added sort of eldritchy sort of elements. They added think about It. Right? The movie It, part 1 and 2. When you see It go from clown to more like monstrous
Right.
version, he has like teeth that get sharper and they kind of like protrude and extend out. Like he's got these mandibles that protrude outside of his mouth.
Right.
It's a little bit of that with some of these models. Like their mouths don't make sense because how would those teeth ever fit in there?
Yeah. And,
you know?
And then even something like the eyes, you realize are just aesthetic or an illusion.
Sure.
Like they don't actually need them.
Right.
They sort of fade.
It's just...
And so even like the way they chose to paint that guy, you know, his eyes are just yellow. And it's like, he might not even need those.
Right.
They're just...
He just senses
it's
you.
some sense of humanity
Right.
left on his face. Otherwise, he just knows you're there. Yeah.
Yeah, super cool. I mean, and we've seen some some hints towards this from previous releases. We had a Warcry warband with the like the Royal Huntsman.
Yep.
Where they have like the guy with the halberd hand.
Yeah.
We had Duke Crackmarrow and his like Underworld warband.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were design elements that we've been seeing for years pointing towards this, and like they do with most of those, you know, small releases, is they give you a hint of what they're working on and what it's going to look like. But then when it actually comes out, it's so much better. Right? Look at the Seraphim warband that they did for Underworlds.
Yep.
The one with the actual Saurus warrior in it and the two little priests, the one of the priests that won Slayer Sword
2 years ago, yeah.
It looks fine. But then you see the newer models that came out for the army proper and you're like, oh man, this Saurus that they came out, this new design Saurus they came out with is so much worse than just the box of generic Saurus warriors they came out with afterwards. Yeah. You know, like it's just...
You know, I think it was either we wanted this or they said something years ago about Underworlds and stuff like that were going to be its own thing, but it was also going to be a sign of their design inspiration. And we had hoped we'd see it bleed over into the other systems proper. And I think we're getting some of that with, like you mentioned, the Seraphon, with these Flesh Eater courts. And now the Death faction, I guess you could say, Allegiance, now has, like, I think proper factions. What do they got?
I feel like they have 4 of them. They're all fully fleshed
and now
out.
they're all really, like, sure, Ossiarchs could use some more, but it's like, these are now 4 very different undead factions. And while historically you would have just combined skeletons and ghouls and vampires all in this thing, they now made 4 very different looking factions, and they work as different factions.
I would like to see maybe more with their Armies of Renown system that they're trying out. Because the Armies of Renown are certainly interesting. I don't know how good they are. I don't know how healthy they are for the game, but they're certainly interesting. Like Ionis's thing that he's got, right? It allows you to play a dragon army more effectively than you could before, but it's also like, I don't think very strong. Because it's so limited. You get 2 spells to choose from. You get 2 prayers to choose from. Like your allegiance ability is objectively worse than just Stormcast. You don't get a sub faction. You know, this is your sub faction basically. Yeah. So it's like if they did something akin to, like, look at Total War with Arkin's army.
Yep.
He can recruit undead from like all the different sub factions of undead. Right, like he can have an army that's skeletons and Tomb Guard, but then he can also add in the ghosts, and he can add in Flesh Eaters, the ghouls and stuff like that.
Yep.
Like he can have all that stuff, which is like, okay, that's kind of an interesting mix because he's a unique character who has his own like allegiance and his own, you know, pool of serfs and minions to pull from to build his armies out of. It would be neat to see something like that where he's got his own Army of Renown, where he has a subset of all kinds of different factions models, you know, where it isn't like, well, you only can pull your models from Bone Reapers if you're for his army.
Right.
If it was a mix of regular skeletons and other stuff.
Here's the units.
A unique new way to play if you play his sub faction. Could be interesting. I don't know.
And you're right in that it's hard to say how good they are. It feels like when they did the old battalions or when they did the old formations in 40K, but now they're leaning on the super safe side. Like this is their 8th attempt or something to try to make this style of play work. I don't know if I'm crazy about them currently, but they are safe enough right now that I'm not bothered by them. I think it's just the idea of them designing that way of like, well, what if we severely limited what you could play, but then it's like way cooler. I don't know, because then it only ever leans one of 2 ways.
It's either way too good, or it's like no good at all.
Yeah, it ends up way worse than just playing the army proper.
Right.
Or it ends up way too good, and that's the only way you play it, or that's the incentive. But design-wise, yeah, I think this is a hit, and they've made these undead factions, I think they've made the Death factions more so than any other alliance.
Yeah.
Really individualized and fleshed out.
Very divergent from one another. Because it's like you've got your standard like skeletons, which the new skeleton warriors with armor and cloth and stuff look very different than just naked skeletons.
Yep.
But that makes them look like they're this Viking-ish sort of society that they're pulling from, which is very different.
Old human faction.
Right, which is very different from like the weird layered plates of the Bone Reapers.
Yeah.
And that's very, very different than like just the ragged, tattered cloth of the Night Haunt. Like they look nothing alike anymore. Yeah. And then here you've got ghouls, which are crazy divergent, maybe even more medieval armor on them that's very different aesthetically now from everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
It's, the 4 Death factions might be the most unique of any of the Grand Alliances.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the Chaos ones all largely have updated models, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But we've known what the different Chaos factions look like forever. And so they really took Undead into new and fantastic directions. And giving each one a Mortarch, I think, was such a cool idea.
Because that is a total of 6 now, right? Nagash usually has. He historically had a court of 8 Mortarchs.
Right.
So there's still room for more.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got 6 now.
Yeah.
2 of which I think are new. I don't think they were previous. Like Catacross wasn't a thing before.
Neither was Oleander.
No, correct. So the Ghost and the Bone Reaper one are new Mortarchs. The other 4 are Mortarchs of old. And so what's going to be the 2? I don't know. Is there going to be another one for Soulblight? I mean, that was kind of one of the thoughts is maybe there would be, because they're leaning really hard into Prince Vordhai, who is the leader of like the Blood Dragon, the old Blood Dragon, the martial vampire, noble vampire faction that heavily favored vampire prowess.
Right.
Giving him potentially a new model, a unique model, not just being a lord on Zombie Dragon, having his own thing, and maybe he becomes a Mortarch, something like that, or I don't know. Maybe who else would have a Mortarch? Maybe another Bone Reaper one that isn't Catacross. Maybe another Ghost. Maybe what's his name? The Craven King. They would never make him a Mortarch. That'd be so funny. Because part of his story is he married into power. He's married to Olander, and because she's the Mortarch, he's always and they're joined together now forever in death. Mm-hmm. He's never going to succeed her in being, head of the family, basically, because she's never going to die. So he's always the token husband, which I think is very...
Maybe there'll be a zombie Mortarch.
Maybe. I mean, I could see there being another sort of, maybe a necromancer-ish one that isn't basically baby Nagash.
Which what Arkan is,
right? Yeah, right. So he's kind of like he's kind of a lich. I want to see like a Von Horstein. Von Horstein? Is that his name? Who's Corpse Cart guy?
Oh.
Horseman?
No, Egron von Horseman was the Tzeentch
warrior
on a dragon.
Right. Horseman. You know what I'm talking about from Total War?
Yeah.
What's his name?
I can't remember.
Who's the guy that had Krell?
Helman Gorst.
Helman Gorst. Is that the guy who had Krell?
Heinrich Himmler had Krell.
Kemmler. Heinrich Kemmler?
Yes.
Okay. They were both necromancers, though. Yep. Am I right?
Yep.
Okay. So either of them could be... that could be interesting. Right? Because what they haven't touched on...
I think they were just human.
Right. That is my point.
Yeah.
What they haven't touched on yet with AOS is that there are human living cities in Nagash's realm.
Right.
In the realm of death. There are living people who pay taxes, who farm in the realm of death. There are living people who pay fealty to the undead leaders.
Yep.
And why not have another high-ranking noble, whatever, Mortarch be a living person, not a dead figure like the rest of them. That could be super interesting.
Right.
I'd like to see where that goes. So,
and they could.
Yeah, absolutely. So super neat. Very, very pleased with them. We'll see how good they are. They've got to be better than they are now, right?
Yeah. So. At least aesthetically, I love the design choices they went. Because you had no mistakes in guessing what they were a part of, what faction they belonged to, but then they just gave us something new also. And the Mortarch himself is model of the year level looking thing.
I was wishlisting cavalry, which we did get, which is super cool. I was hoping for little terrorgeists, which is basically what these things are. Super neat.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously the armored ghouls. I hope they don't replace normal ghouls. I hope they have separate purposes. I hope normal ghouls are just like fodder, and these armored ghouls or the sword ghouls have.
I think they are. I mean, they show them both here.
Yeah,
they show both versions with him. So I imagine the regular ghouls are still. We've seen them in composite pictures of the army.
But I hope they don't do much. They're just bodies, and the ones with weapons and stuff actually do the damage.
Rats, basically.
Yeah, sure. Clan rats and storm vermin. Perfect analogy. That'd be great.
How does it feel that since we're on I think we're just kind of on AOS today.
Yeah.
Skaven got runner-up at the World Championships.
Which is really funny, because in order to get second, the Skaven guy, I think he lost like 4 games in a row to the same guy. It was something like that.
He at least lost,
it was 3. No, I think it was 3 games in a row to the same guy.
Yeah, I know he at least lost 2.
Yeah. Because the way that it worked was single elimination up the bracket, best of 3 for finals, and if you lost to, if like the winner of the winner bracket lost to the winner of the losers bracket, there was a sudden death extra game that had to play in order to like
basically a rematch,
right,
where the person who went in as winning all the way through the winner bracket got another chance.
Right.
And I think he lost to the Lumineth guy twice.
I see that. It was something like that. Yeah. And so it's like, oh, that's a bummer. The list, I don't know if we talked about on this, but we talked about it at some point, what the list was trying to do. And it's really scary how good plague sensor bearers are.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty ridiculous.
And it sounds like when I was listening to their MetaWatch analysis of it today, and on what little footage I got to watch, it sounds like it was like a reverse screen is how the army functioned. So instead of your little derpy guys being out front to screen and protect the better things, they were running the screaming bells out in front. And a lot of armies, short of a really heavy shooty army, which I guess the Skaven army had answers for, like it was really difficult to remove. A lot of armies can't just run to the screaming bells and kill them. And then if you got close anyway or did certain amount of, they were summoning vermin lords, and then it just got out of hand. And then they had a way to bridge the plague sensor bearers around if they had to.
Right.
And that unit just whacks.
Which are scary. Yeah. Especially when you give them like Death Frenzy. When like, oh, I killed you, but you fight and swing at me 4 times at 2 damage apiece. Like we're talking like cast chosen level of damage from these guys, and they're so much cheaper.
Yeah.
They're very, very good.
And the best part, though, I think, was listening to the excitement of everybody from Eddie during the live stream to the MetaWatch guy to the design team. Their excitement about Skaven's success and the unit that was successful, I think it immediately made the design team think, we have to give them some updated models.
Good.
Because when they were talking about stuff like plague sensor bearers being this good, it was like, but they're sitting on these old models that are really hard to get. And
so they are direct order. We looked it up because I was trying to feel like, well, how much is 30 plague sensor bearers right now?
Right.
And honestly, with how point increases, or not point, with how dollar like inflation increases have happened for everything. Well, everything. But in terms of like Games Workshop models, they are $45 for 5 models. And when you think about that, you're like, that's not bad. now that's not bad, because now usually when
you're
you have
used
like
to $15-$60 for 5.
You've got $50-$60 for 5 guys of newer plastic models. These are old metal ones, so they're worse.
Yeah.
But still, $45 for 5 of them is like, well, now hang on, that's not bad. Because I mean, you're looking at 6 boxes of $45. It's still a lot of money, right? It's still $260 or whatever.
Right.
Is that right? 90 times 3, $270 before taxes and whatever.
For a unit.
For 2 units of 15 guys.
Okay.
So they are battle line because you've got plague priests, so you can double reinforce them up to 15, which is neat that you can actually do that. And it's a very, very killy Death Star kind of like, I'll kill anything in the game kind of unit. It's just so many attacks. But like, it's actually not bad cost effective wise. Like it's not awful. If it were come to like Squire Acolytes though, that's one that's like, can't do it.
Never happened.
Can't do it. Can't get official models because they're literally like a 3-man box for $60 or something. It's insane.
Yeah.
But it's 3 for 40, whatever.
But I have to imagine that based on the wish list rumors you've heard about Skaven being important in the next edition of AOS, to Games Workshop getting an intimate look at how they perform, and then the excitement that like the chat, that just the community was like to see Skaven perform in a list that I guess 0 people were familiar with.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I have so many Skaven that I could build any list.
Yep.
I didn't like heavy pestilence. I don't like clan pestilence very much.
Yeah.
But there was definitely like plague sensor bearers being the heaviest hitters in that entire army is definitely not a secret. They are stupid good, especially the latest book they got. Their damage like more than doubled. Because before, like, they were only like one swing or one damage swings, and then they doubled their damage up to 2, and then gave them an extra swing. Like, it's not a secret. They were so good.
Yeah, I think the way the guy ran his army is what
that is the funny bit.
Blew people's mind.
4 chariots basically was the funny part.
Yeah,
because that's each of the 3 screaming bells can then, when they get low or whatever, they can sacrifice themselves to turn into vermin lords potentially. And then all the damage you dealt trying to do that much to them, they basically fully heal in a different form. And then they're even scarier once you get close to them. Because it's like, any of the Vermin Lord variants are good.
Yeah.
Like, literally any of them. The issue you run into is it's like, they're expensive. So, like, it kind of hurts to build a list when you're like, well, I'll pay 400 points a piece for a Vermin Lord. They don't deserve to be 400 points. They're not that good.
Yeah.
With how much, like, other heavy hitting stuff is in the game, especially like when your biggest benefit of like the Deceiver, right? The Vermin Lord Deceiver is that your AP3 with your stiletto. I mean, there's plenty of AP3 in the game elsewhere. It's not that special anymore. If it's a big monster only getting a few attacks with AP3, then it's like cool and all, but I can just shoot you with bows. You only have a 4-up save.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, So I don't know. It's
well, and I guess the Lumineth list also played in a way that was kind of unique. And I guess people were even saying there's like a way in which it just falls apart if a certain sequence happens, but it was hard for people to come up with that.
Well, it was like 1,300 points of wizards, of characters.
Yeah,
it was a lot.
Yeah,
I guess not just wizards, because it was Teclis and the Light of Eltharion.
Yeah,
which then two alone.
Because Teclis is over 700, didn't he?
He's 680 maybe. 720. He's somewhere in that. He's around 700 points.
Yeah.
But then the rest of it was like support caster wizards. It ended up being like 1,300 points of characters, and then it was because I take a look at the list. It was like min units of like cavalry, and then 1 unit of like spearmen, and that was it. Like it was just all about getting objectives and not really fighting. I mean, it did a lot of damage because with how many wizards there are, you can put out a lot of mortal wounds with spells. Right, like that's kind of what that army's trying to do, is do a lot of its damage through spells, and then you cast all your defensive buffs with unstoppable spells from Teclis.
Yeah.
So you have your defenses bolstered. You've got good ranged damage. You've got fast movers that can go get objectives and steal things. It's a very finessey list, and it's very interesting that it actually worked out.
Yeah.
I think that the biggest benefit that he had over Skaven was that Skaven just can't catch him. Skaven are too slow to catch that list. Because like the fastest thing you have is
probably a Vermilord after your unit dies.
Yeah, if you can summon him.
Or you're teleporting the 1 unit of guys.
But you still have to end outside of 9.
Yeah.
And that's not a guaranteed charge. You know?
Yep.
So I don't know. I think it was list advantage that the Lumineth had. And then obviously Teclis being able to shut down the spells. So you couldn't even have, if you took Skitter Leap or if you had Death Frenzy, he would just be like, nope.
Yep.
Because that's what Teclis does. He says, nah, I can unbind as many times as I want from anywhere on the board. I will shut down all your spells.
And it might have been the player had a lot of practice with the list. And then it was just really well suited for that top 8.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he went in, I think the Skaven guy went in as like the top seed, maybe, or whatever. But the Lumineth guy just looks like kind of, I think he lost the first one and then like won out.
Right.
Basically.
But, that kind of story, you lose your first round and then you just win all the way to the finals.
Yeah. Well, I think he lost the first round of the top 8.
Okay.
But they did that double a limb. And because of that format, it turned out there were 0 people who went undefeated in the AOS side. Really so there was no one who just ran the table.
Right.
Like, which we're used to seeing, because most tournaments, they don't even do a, quote, top 8. They just do a, like, you win until you're down to the last undefeated.
Right. I love doing a top 8.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, well, we're not, okay, you made it to top 8. Whatever you did before this point in the days, you're zeroed out.
Right. It's
You know?
it's the same way people look at the playoffs in like the NFL.
Exactly.
Sure,
You
you were the
your
best team during the season, but now you're in the playoffs.
But your performance during the season determines where you're seated.
Correct.
And so it's like generally, you kind of have an advantage. If you're seed 1, you're playing against seed 32 or whatever.
You're always playing the home game.
16, whatever. Whoever's the worst person to qualify, you play against.
Yep.
And so you have an advantage there, kind of.
Do.
But how many times is it that like the bottom seed just beats the top seed?
Happens.
You know, like.
Happens.
You're not like, oh, you're a top seed, you're going to win the whole thing.
And it's because you're right. It sounds cliche, but once you get to that playoff or that top 8, now it doesn't matter. You get a fresh start, and you get to just prepare for that week, that game.
Yeah.
And we've seen it. Now, I know it's harder in a game like Warhammer where the games can be 3 hours long to do a top 8 when everybody's exhausted already. But we see it with like Magic the Gathering. You do a top 8, you always do. Yep. And that can change everything. Someone might have stormed through the whole tournament, and then they get to that top 8 and run into the perfectly bad match.
Right. I mean, we see that all the time when we run tournaments or we go to tournaments locally. Is you always have an issue where there's not enough rounds to get down to a single winner. Right. Because in order to have with 16 people and to have a single winner, you need 5 rounds to pull that off. Right. One round cuts to 8, 4, 2, 1. Is it 4 rounds total? Yeah, 4 rounds total to cut down to a single winner. And so if you have a 4-round day of any tabletop game, you're looking at like a 14-hour day.
Yep.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That is a lot to ask of 16 people.
It is.
But if it were something like 17 people, well, now your system's all thrown off. Because now you can have 2 undefeateds. It's just the way it works. Anything more than 16 means you can't cut clean necessarily. You could,
right?
But it's possible
Things have to fall just right.
It's possible you don't. And so we've had issues with doing for Legion. We have a buddy who's trying to qualify it, and last time he went to a tournament, it was a 4-rounder. It had 24 people or 28 people of the 32 that were scheduled to play. It was a 5-round tournament. No, 4-round tournament, and he was one of the 2 undefeateds for the day.
Yep.
And didn't get first place, therefore not getting a qualifier to Worlds.
Yep.
Well, that fucking sucks.
Yep.
That is awful. But if they would have cut to a top 8 and then made the top 8 just play to a single victor, then it didn't matter how many people did or did not show up that were supposed to.
Right.
But that means the second day with 3 more rounds, basically, to figure out who wins.
Well, and one of our friends even proposed, why not just have the 2 undefeateds play a game?
Right.
You have some TO stay and they play.
Just play a sudden death with just the 2 of you. Because that's all that really matters is who's going to get top. But making it so that, well, you're undefeated, but this other undefeated had a better turnout for the other games he played during the day that you didn't impact whatsoever because you didn't play against them. Therefore, he wins, you get nothing.
Right.
Or you get an insulting trophy.
Right.
First loser.
First loser is what he got, yeah. And that's even what they call it. We're not just saying that.
Yeah.
The trophy says first loser
first
on
loser. God, it's rough.
And it's like, it's one thing for someone to be self-deprecating and call themselves first loser when they get second. It's another when the venue gives you that as an actual award. But so many of the GT level events are 32 to 64. And so they do 5 rounds over 2 days. You end up with multiple undefeated. Yep. And then you have to decide on tiebreakers who wins.
I hate it. I hate the idea of just someone sitting in a room deciding who won. Yep. When you went undefeated, you don't win.
Yep.
That feels awful.
You don't even make it to the playoff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand there's systems in place like kill points and what do they call it? Strength of schedule. Yep. So like if your other opponents did well the rest of the day, you win tiebreakers because they did well. It's nonsense.
Because it makes it look like you beat higher quality competition.
Right. Yeah. But it still feels awful.
It does.
I mean, I get you have to do something to figure it out, but like there's got to be a better solution. Even if it was just like you 2 walk up and you say, all right, flip a coin. Then at least you have a 50-50 chance of beating the person. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like anything.
If they're worried about time with regards to a tabletop game, you could probably even do 1 round less and cut to a top 8.
Yeah.
Couldn't you? You could do like on a GT level event, you could do 4 rounds, cut to top 8, and now you're not worried about we have to drag another day of 3 rounds or something. Because that is obviously the issue is time with the tabletop game.
You have 20 people come out, you play 1 game, cut to top 8.
Cut to top 8. So the 10 of you who went 1-0
Of the 12 of you that went 1-0,
Yeah.
or 10 of you that went 1-0, 2 of you don't get to go to the top 8. Sorry.
Feels good. Yeah. But even in that example, if you have 20, or even like a nice number that divides, 24 players show up. You do 2 rounds, and you've already cut down to so few.
Yeah.
Unbeatens.
Then there's 6 undefeateds in that. You choose 2 people that went 1 loss. You're now top 8. Now play for it. Still 5 games in one day.
Right.
But whatever. 8, 4, 2. Yeah.
I mean, and while you might have other players who want to keep playing, like even though they went 1-1 and don't get to be in the top 8 or whatever, still. I mean, just the idea is you can shave something if it's time that's the issue, or start planning tournaments to be Saturday, Sunday.
That's a harder ask for some people, but if it's especially something like a Worlds qualifier invitation.
When it's a big enough event, yeah.
Yeah.
And you only get so many cracks at that, and the travel's unrealistic to expect someone to go to 4 or 5 of those. So that was just a bummer because obviously we're biased. We're friends with the guy, and he ended up in that exact rare situation where, well, if 2 more people had shown up, they could have given the second one out or whatever the case was.
Because that was the issue with Legion's invitation system is you need to have 16 people show up and play to give out invitation. And if you only have 10 people come out, you're not allowed to give out an invitation. And it's being audited now. But if you want to have 2 invitations, you need to have a 32-person event.
Right.
Well, it turns out that whatever this weekend was that they had the event, there were something like 50 people signed up. 18 of the waiting list, none of them came. And then like 2 to 4 people who were part of the 32 didn't show either. Yeah. It was like a massive list of people who were like on call to show up. So the second invite could be given out. Just like all of them didn't show. So it's like, man, that is rough.
That is rough. And how that many people can sign up and then not show. And then when they need the backups, the backups don't show.
Aren't available. Oh my God.
But speaking of signing up, we just got the first hints of the Adepticon stuff.
Okay.
Coming up. And it looks like December 8th, which is a Friday, right? Is the cart preview launch, which is where you get to see
what events are
going to be there. And then January 7th.
Oh man, that's late. Doesn't that feel late for badges?
I swear, I could be wrong. I could be misremembering, but I thought years ago we used to do this in like November, December at the latest.
It was like early November we'd sign up for events.
Because I remember,
and then we had like 2 months to amend.
Yeah, because I remember when some of our friends would get the VIP, what it looked like back then. Yeah. It was always November. You'd get the badge. Yeah. You'd sign up for it. Now it's January 7th. The registration opens. There's an option to ship badges. We don't know what that looks like yet. It could be like Gen Con's system or whatever. That ends in February, and then all registration closes February 26th.
Okay.
And then March 8th is the final day for all refunds. March 20th, I think, is the
start of it.
Event. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was like it makes it that much more real. That we're that much closer to it once these.
I wonder how they're going to do the VIP or VIG badges this year around, because they've done it multiple times, multiple different ways. Yeah. They've done, you're in queue and you get there first and you get it. They do opt into it and you get an email saying, hey, you've been chosen as part of a raffle kind of system to then pay extra to get the VIG, which for fairness' sake, that's the one I prefer they do, because then at least everyone who's interested has a chance, right? It's not like, well, I was in the load balancer queue first. Yeah, I was able to get through, and I
somehow was the one that didn't bug out.
I hit refresh enough times that the thing was available when I processed through, and that kind of thing. Like I hate the first come first serve thing. For that kind of thing, that's so sought after.
It's so sought after, and the reason the first come first serve thing is awful is just because no matter what, all the things are gone in like 15 minutes at the most, and it's just the servers crash because too many people are on at once. And so it's a matter of who managed to slip through that, purely lucky, and didn't get the crash, got to their cart and got out of there. And so they got it. Yeah. Or I was one of those.
You went in late and you tried it again. And like counts were freed up.
I was like logged into work at the same time. And so I would go over and like try to get in and there was nothing. I couldn't even, then I was like, screw it. I'll just get the basic badge. Couldn't get it. One of the times I refreshed, it said a VIG was available. One VIG was available, and I just check out and it gave it to me. And it's like, well, that sucks for anybody.
Right.
who was in there waiting,
who had that VIG selected,
got to their checkout,
timed out, refreshed, it was gone. You had it. You get to
right.
it,
That's the biggest one. Is it goes in someone's cart. Why is there nothing there for them to secure that? Instead, it's like, sorry, it's not there.
That happens with the hotel block all the time too.
Yeah.
Where like I go in, the room's available, I click OK, I move on to the checkout as I'm entering my info, which auto-populates, by the way. I auto-populated my info, hit checkout, and said this room's no longer available. Well, why, if it was in my cart and I was doing the payment, why did it not reserve and hold that room while I was paying for it?
Right, until someone decides they don't want it, and then you plop it back in the queue.
Right? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Basic IT.
Basic IT stuff. Come on.
Come on.
Come on.
Yeah. We did get a room this year, though.
We did, which is nice. One of us always gets a room.
We've been lucky.
Yeah.
We're on
usually
quite a streak.
There's 4 of us who share it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just enough room for 4 adult men.
Yep.
To I wouldn't say stay comfortably, but to stay. And it's worth it to be on site. If it were we're going to stay at the Red Roof or the Motel 8, all 4 of us, I'd be like, nah.
No.
I'm going to get my own. Most 2 per room. I want my own bed.
Yep.
If it's on site, though, it's like...
You just deal with the little bit of discomfort because there's so many comforts that come with being on site. I mean, how many times have we been walking and you're just achy, tired, or everybody's on a slightly different schedule. Right. And it's like the fact that you can just go to the elevator, go up there, chill, or drop off stuff.
Right.
We've even had it where our friends who are at the event but not staying on site can then use our on-site to drop stuff off.
Or like how many events are on site late at night and you're like, man, I'd love to go to that. But I can't.
We have to get in the car and drive 25
because we have to drive
away,
and it's got to get up early in the morning and get back here. Or like maybe you and I don't, but 2 people we're staying with do.
Yeah.
And so we can't stay because we don't have a ride home. We all drove here together.
Yep. Yep.
And so it's like, well, now I can't go to this late night mixer or orgy, whatever.
Right. I mean, you gotta find that stuff on site.
So like, the potential isn't there because you're not on site.
Right. So. And when you are on site, then you can even host your own.
Right. Or, do like the guys down the hall did last time where they knocked out 3 36-packs a night.
They did.
Of just like cheap.
The boxes were outside the room.
Lord, how?
But you know what? They didn't have to worry about driving anywhere.
Exactly. So way to be responsible.
Way to be responsible. And it also gives us an advantage for some of the things we do now, like with this podcast, where we can set up shop there. It doesn't matter what time of night.
Right.
We don't have to worry about getting back.
Yep.
And so we can even then interview guests and our friends who are there, like we did last time. So, just the advantages of staying on site. If any of you are going to Adepticon,
try to get on site.
You got a group of people. Everybody open a tab at once. Pay each other back if you have to.
You'd think that it would be like, oh well, if you're staying on site, it's going to be super expensive, right? No, it's one of the cheapest hotel options.
It is.
That isn't a motel, right? Like hotels nearby. It's a very affordable hotel,
especially if you're splitting with some folks.
It's just
reasonable.
It's so great.
Especially when we even look at something like Gen Con. In Indianapolis, you can't get a hotel in walking distance of that event that is anywhere near cheap enough compared to Adepticon.
Well, there's also, I love Gen Con. Gen Con is great.
Love it.
If I had to choose one or the other, it'd be Adepticon every single time.
Well, for one, the fact that you can stay on the same side as the event,
right?
But it's miniatures only, and that's really our jam.
Yeah.
I love everything that there is with Gen Con.
It's also cost. I mean, just paying the $140 for the weekend just to go in.
Yeah.
Not being set up for any events, just to go into the convention hall. It's crazy expensive.
It is.
Just to attend. Whereas with Adepticon, if you want to attend and go to the vendor hall, you don't need a badge.
Nope.
You just walk in and go and buy stuff.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep.
That is an advantage in my mind. It adds up, right? If you need a badge, you get VIG or you get premium badge plus a couple events, like it adds up. It does. But at least you're paying for something, right? Like you pay the money, you go and you do a thing. You pay the money, you go and you get a thing.
If you want to enter a painting competition, you got to get a badge. But
it's fine. But while Gen Con is much, much larger, and they've got the food vendors are all on site and everything. Like it's
summertime, so you can go outside without a problem. Yeah.
Adepticon, every single weekend that Adepticon is hosted is the coldest weekend of the year. For some reason,
It is.
that weekend in March is just blustery, cold.
Wind.
It always snows with like 40-degree wind.
Yep.
So it's like ice particles hitting you in the face.
Just
the worst. It's just sandblasting you.
Yep.
And then it's like
one day it'll tease you and be like 40s and whatever.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, it's always awful weather.
Yep. But I'd still choose that one every time.
I would choose it every time.
Not only is it the closest convention to us,
Yep.
but it's also the most geared for us, right?
It is.
Golden Demon, I think, is a huge draw. And even when it was Crystal Brush,
Yep.
right? It was still
Huge
It was
draw.
still a huge draw to go compete in that.
And there's hundreds of people around the case all day, every day. I think like we always try to make it so we can go to more conventions, and we would obviously like to. And so we try to pick 2 a year, but we always know no matter what the second one is, we're going to Adepticon.
Right. Adepticon, what else?
Yeah. and when we pick Gen Con, it's that late summer. The downtown Indianapolis area is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so that's why we do that.
This year, I'm not sure though. Right? This next year coming up, because we've been made aware of several other conventions that are kind of within that same couple weeks around Gen Con. So it's like, well, maybe we need to make some decisions this time.
But if we do make that decision,
we
have to do it earlier.
I know.
Because the last time we waited, and then all our options were kind of gone.
Because there was one great way to do it, which was there was an Airbnb neighborhood, which I think is not that anymore. Because that was amazing. Because we were about a mile from downtown with that Airbnb, and it was like...
The one we had is still there. I communicated with her after.
Okay.
It was just, she had sold out long before we were looking, before we got everybody in the group to decide if they were going. And I think the biggest deterrent, because we love the event, and we all want to take advantage of downtown, but we've had things, whether it was like kids with us or something that affect our schedule, but the badge is so expensive for that event.
Yeah. Well, I think about like my situation, right? When I come with my wife, we both go. We're not participating in anything. It's like $300 just to get in.
Just for two of you to get in. Yeah.
It's like woof.
Woof.
That's a look.
And that's just a look.
That's just a look.
It's just a look.
Ouch. And hopefully they have received feedback on that, because that's... I don't think it's ever going to change, because just the hundreds of thousands of people show up.
Well, every year it has gone up, and not just gone up like $5 a badge. It goes up a chunk every time. Is the thing. Like every time we're a little more shocked. I remember when it was like $85 for the full weekend. I was like, what?
Whoa. It's not even participating in anything.
Yeah.
Ouch. Yeah, now it's like $140.
Yeah.
But that's okay. That's fine. It's still fun. Still a good time.
Yeah. But, one thing that's down there, and that we try to find when we're at Adepticon, obviously is not even just the convention itself, but what's around, what's going on around, whether it's a show, comedian, or of course, food.
Or the zoo.
The zoo, we always hit a zoo in the nice weather.
Yeah. But food is a big one. That's part of the reason you travel, right?
Sometimes the only reason you travel is to eat in a place you've never eaten before.
Yeah.
But I'd be willing to eat in a place we have eaten before right now.
Yeah, let's eat.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed. Check out our new episodes every Friday on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible, or on Podbean. You can also follow myself and Llama on Instagram for more. We are at Hyena Paints Minis and at Llama Paints Minis. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. And as always, we will catch you next time.